Here's kind of a weird question. Should you breathe through your nose or through your mouth when singing? Actually, not so weird, and I get asked that all the time. Experts tend to agree that a nose breath is preferable, but I say it depends, and here's why. Welcome back to Singing Tips with LJDstudios, the space where we take difficult singing concepts and break them down so you can actually understand them and implement them for better singing. I'm Laura, and today we're talking about the pros and cons of a nose breath versus a mouth breath. But before we do, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and download my free guide, The 3-Tiered Approach to Becoming a Better Singer. And without further ado, nose breath versus mouth breath. Okay, so I agree, in the long run, a nose breath is probably preferable to a mouth breath. Why? What are some of the benefits of breathing through your nose? One benefit is it just filters out dust particles and stuff. And the last thing you want is to take like a deep breath to sing a high note and to start coughing, right? So that's one benefit. Another benefit is it warms the air as it comes into your body. So when we breathe through the nose, the air comes obviously through your nostril, and then it comes down through the throat, through the vocal cords, and into the lungs. So that air gets sort of warmed up when it travels that path versus going directly through your mouth and down through the vocal cords where that air stays a little bit cooler. So you can imagine slightly warmed and even like hydrated air is going to be better for your vocal cords than that cold, dry air that passes directly over them when you breathe through your mouth. Additionally, when we breathe through our nose, it tends to be a slightly slower breath. Slower breathing triggers the relaxation response in the body, which is great for all kinds of things, but especially for singing, we don't want unnecessary stress or tension. We don't necessarily want to be in that fight or flight response. We want to be in the relaxation response. So especially if you're dealing with any performance anxiety or anything like that, a nose breath can be super beneficial for that. Breathing through your nose also is helpful for when it comes to lifting the soft palate and in general just relaxing your jaw, your throat, etc. Though I will talk about how a mouth breath can also help you find a more relaxed throat as well. So those are generally the reasons why people say a nose breath is preferable for singing, but here are a few caveats when I think a mouth breath might work out better. When we first start out as singers, there are lots of things to try and keep in mind. And one of the things we often start out with is breathing, and particularly the inhale. And when it comes to the inhale, I've made lots of videos on this, and you may have seen others do videos on this, right? We're often looking for expansion through the belly and through the ribs as we breathe in, and not as much through the chest. And that's not to say that the chest shouldn't move. It's just that you're not looking to make it the only compartment that moves. I'll link some videos in the description that detail breathing for singing a little further, but that's often step one, is breathe in. Can you fill your belly and your ribs in addition to the chest versus just filling the chest? Okay, what does this have to do with nose breathing? My experience is that when we say like take a deep breath, there is this instinct to literally take the breath, meaning like pull the breath to you, right? So I think because our nostrils are obviously smaller than our mouths, when we breathe through the nose, there's more of a tendency to kind of breathe like that, right? To really kind of try to pull the air to you. And the more we think about this idea of like trying to take the breath and pull it to us, the more likely we are to breathe up into the chest. Like that, right? That's not to say that you can't breathe into your belly and ribs and inhale through your nose. In fact, that would be ideal. But if you are a beginning singer, that's what I have seen. I have seen people go to take a deep breath through their nose and have it look like that, okay? So if you are working on breathing into your belly and breathing more into your ribs for singing, sometimes a mouth breath is easier because it helps us realize that you don't have to take in the air, you just have to receive it. And I know that sounds a little like flowery, but I mean that pretty literally. There's that old adage, nature abhors a vacuum. I love that we got the word abhors in there, but nature doesn't like a vacuum, right? And so when you create space in your body, because nature doesn't like a vacuum, air is just going to rush in. So you don't have to suck the air to you. All you have to do is let your body fill up, right? Imagine if you had an empty glass and you submerged it in water. What would happen? All that water would rush into the glass. Your body is really similar, right? You're making that space, and now there's this empty space, and you're in a room full of air. That air is just going to rush in. So when we breathe through our mouth, we can kind of experience that more easily because the air rushes in a little quicker because the space is bigger and you don't have mucus and hair and everything else, which are good things that your nose has and does, but it slows down the speed at which air enters, which I think is what makes us feel like we have to pull it to us faster, right? So if you breathe through your mouth, you can just feel how air floods your body. So I would encourage you, if you are working on this idea of breathing into your belly and your ribs, or just trying to breathe lower, or trying to breathe anywhere besides just your chest, and if that's difficult, try inhaling through your mouth and make it a quiet breath. So you can experience what it's like to have air just rush into your body, to just receive the inhale rather than trying to take the inhale. So that's what I see as the primary benefit of breathing through your mouth. And again, I mean that more for those of us who are just starting out on our singing journeys and implementing techniques. I think it can just be easier if you breathe through your mouth. And eventually I do encourage graduating to the nose breath. But to start out, it could be easier through your mouth. Another thing that I think is easier about breathing through your mouth is that generally to sing, your mouth needs to be open. And one thing I see a lot with new singers is that we're hesitant to open our mouths very much, and especially for higher pitches. And so if that's something you're working on and just trying to get your mouth a little bit more open, or even just relaxing the jaw, it's nice if you can just kind of set everything up on the inhale. And now I'm there. My mouth is where it needs to be, and all I have to do is sing, versus breathe in, then open my mouth. There's this added step. And when we have that added step, sometimes we hold the breath, or sometimes we just don't open the mouth, or sometimes it's just too much to think about. So another benefit, if you are just starting out on this singing journey of yours, of breathing through your mouth, is that it just kind of sets everything up right from the get-go, right? You breathe into your belly, you breathe into the ribs, you open the mouth, everything's there, and you can just go. Also, if you are working on relaxing your larynx at all, and I've got a video on what your larynx should be doing when you're singing, but if you are trying to think about creating a sensation of, let's say the beginning of a yawn at the beginning, because that's something that voice teachers talk about a lot. The beginning of a yawn kind of sets your larynx in this just slightly lowered position, which can be beneficial often for singing. Not always, you don't always want to doing that, but often that's something we're looking for, and it can create this feeling of relaxation through the throat. So if you are trying to relax your larynx, and if you're looking for a little bit of a yawn, that's something else that's a lot easier to do with your mouth open, right? If you ever try to yawn with your mouth closed, it's right? It's hard to do. So if you breathe in like you're about to yawn. Now my larynx is slightly lowered, my mouth is open, and everything is just set and ready to go. And again, you can do this when you breathe through your nose. It's just not quite as easy. And so it's another time when you eventually, once you get the hang of that, right? If you're trying to relax the throat or get that slight feeling of a yawn or whatever as you breathe in, it's easier to do with your mouth, but ideally you would eventually do it breathing through the nose. But again, we usually yawn with our mouths open. So if that's something you've tried and are struggling with, try inhaling through your mouth and see if it makes that easier. Last but not least, benefit of potentially breathing through your mouth is it's just faster. So there might be moments when you're singing and there's not a very big break in the music and you need to catch a breath. Those are moments also where sometimes it can be easier to just breathe through your mouth, because again, it's a bigger opening, and so air is going to rush in a little bit more quickly if you breathe in through your mouth versus your nose. If you're not in a hurry and you feel good about breathing through your nose, then do it. But every now and again, we just have to breathe through our mouths because there's not time to breathe through your nose, especially if you've got any kind of congestion or whatever, even if it's just on one side, right? A nose breath is often slower. So if you need a fast breath, a mouth breath can be helpful for that too. All right, I hope that answers the question, nose versus mouth breath. Don't be afraid to try things that seem like they're wrong, right? Just because someone told you you should breathe through your nose doesn't mean there might not be times when it'd be beneficial to you to breathe through your mouth. And I hope the way we broke this down today helps you to see that like there's not always a right and a wrong. There's just what are you going for, okay? So I hope this helps you decide what's going to work best for you. Happy singing.